Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. I've been running for a few years now and have the privilege of meeting many incredible runners on my travels all across the country. This podcast is intended to share those amazing conversations. Peter Bromka is a marathoner with Bowerman Track Club Elite, a father and husband, as well as a writer and consultant living in Portland, Oregon. Peter has roots in the Boston area, attending Tufts University for undergrad, and is on a passionate journey to achieve the Olympic Trials Marathon Standard, a 2:19 marathon. In this podcast, we talked about setting and striving for big, scary goals and what it takes to see progress like he's seen over the last few years. We talk a lot about numbers and pace in this episode. While Peter's pace is faster than most, the goal is to help explain that no matter if there's a 2, 3, 5, 8, or whatever number in front of your marathon time, you can always strive for more. Peter offered some tips on what we can all do to keep progressing. Enjoy. Hi, I am here in Boston, Massachusetts with Peter Bromka, who's here to do something about a marathon. So, Peter, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I flew in yesterday, and so exciting to come into the city on this weekend.
So you are from Boston. So what's it like?
I am not from Boston. I used to live here.
Right.
And I'm passionate about the area. I am from Portland, Oregon, where I live now. But both my parents met at Boston College, and I always thought it'd be wonderful to come back here for college. So I ended up going to Tufts University, running there, lived in Cambridge for years afterwards, ran Boston twice in 0506, and then eventually moved to the West Coast. But I love coming back, and my wife is from Rhode Island, so I come back many times a year.
Nice. So we were in the elevator, and a guy looked at us and said, "Hey, are you running the marathon on Monday?" And you said, "Yep." And he said, "Are you have you run it before?" And you said, "Yep, I've done it 6 times." And as you've seen, and as everyone will see, Boston freaking loves the marathon.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've run. This will be, I guess, my 12th marathon, and there's just a pride that people here have. Like, they own the race, and then
even if they're not a runner.
Oh no, like they don't have to be a runner at all. And you see it out on the course. Like, they are, particularly in the smaller towns early in the miles, like they're yelling to you to cheer you on, but like with an expectation in their eyes, like, you better perform because this is our day, and like this is our holiday, and you're here and you're our guest, and show up.
As David Ortiz so elegantly said, "This is our fucking city. Let's go."
I love him.
So you've had an interesting last couple of years. You've put out some really big, scary goals. Let's talk about that. Keep on dreaming, even if it breaks your heart, right?
I mean, it's been pretty wonderful. It sounds like cliche when I tell people that I had run Boston twice and then was like, okay, cool. Marathoning, check, done it. I grew up a runner, ran in college, 5K, mile. And then there's sort of like, you're looking for that next big thing to do. And running Boston was it. And then you're like, nothing can get bigger than that. So I'm probably done. So then I spent like 6 or 7, 8 years just, running maybe 20 miles a week, jumping into adventures with friends, but not doing too much. And then it sounds a little bit too succinct to be true, but really the Boston bombing happened, and I still like remember it so vividly, like everyone does, and looked at the screen and was like, we started messaging friends, making sure they're okay. And then we're pretty quickly like, we got to run Boston 14. Like it's going to be a momentous day. We got to do it. So in short order, like found a marathon 2 months later, went and qualified, and sort of got injured in the process because like that's not a great way to do marathon.
2-month build.
Too much too soon. But then recovered from it and ran Boston 14. And that year I ran 2:41. And this is what I always try to impart on people. Most recently in December I ran 2:19:40. But I was like so stoked with my 2:41. Like I remember sitting around with a beer with my buddies afterwards and like, great run, Bromka. And I was like, thanks, man. It was a good day. And they had beaten me by like 5-10 minutes. But like the meaning of those goals and just finding a goal it only needs to be meaningful to you. And so I had aimed to have a good day in Boston 14, it was such a momentous day in running history. And then to finish and look over and be like, hey, why is Meb wearing a gold crown? And they're like, because he won. And, you know, it was so overwhelming. But then, you know, I think of it like getting slipped into a slipstream of excitement around running and particularly marathoning. So then I was able to get a bib to Chicago 14, you know, that fall. And I was like, I had a friend and he was like, I've always thought I could run 6-minute pace for the marathon. I'm like, oh, what's that? He's like, 2:37 to break, like 15 to break 2:37 essentially. And I was like, that sounds like a good goal. I'm going to do that. So from a hilly course, 2:41 to a flat course,
pancake flat,
and just like this mass, I've written an essay about it, like this mass of humanity from around the world that are all running 6-minute pace, and to slip into that and be like, it's hard to describe. I've tried in my writing, just the meaning of that. You don't introduce yourself, you just like slip in. And I was like, hey guys, what are you running? And they're like, 6s. And you're like, cool. And just to be like rolling through a crisp fall day in Chicago and like find your team, was so cool.
Is there any chatting that goes on?
There's those like, what are you running? 6s.
Yeah.
We good?
It's just silent though. It's just like, you're just like rolling.
Yeah. I think, wide streets and all these, just these little, and then you'll go by a mile mark and you'll hear like beep, 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 as people's garments are going off. Right. And then there's that collective like nervousness of, are we, particularly when you're trying to walk a very serious, like a very crisp line, right. 6 minutes. I've since tried to break other barriers that involve like some ebb and flow, of like, well, if you're trying to, so then, yeah, I ran 2:36 and I told people like, I've had about 6 marathons where in the middle, particularly towards the end, I've been like, finish this. This might be the fastest you ever run. And
is it usually Paul Leak that's out there yelling at you?
Yeah. A good friend, Paul Leak, was at the end of CIM this December I posted a video of him screaming at me. That's just like so inspiring and so haunting and so equally inspiring and haunting that it's just like,
it haunts me. I hear that.
He just, I just recall it. There was about 4 minutes left. So it's inside a mile to go. Like you should be theoretically in celebration mode, but I knew I was right on the edge of an OTQ-ish. And he just yelled like, fight for it, Bromka, fight for it. And you're like, I know I should want to fight for it, but like, I so want to give in right now. And so, yeah, it's been this like cascading things of like, I ran 2:36 in Chicago in 14. My son was born in the spring of 15, so I took Boston 15 off and didn't run. And then fall of 15, I was like, a buddy goes, we should go to New York. So, you sign up in January. I was lucky enough to have a qualifying time, so I was able to skip the lottery, which is pretty stressful for a lot of people. But then, so from Chicago flat to New York hilly, like serious marathon, I was like, I bet I could break 2:35. 2 minutes, but also hills, and was lucky enough to like dial that in, run a race and run 2:34. And it was about that time that people were like, all right, man, like, when are you gonna stop beating around the bush? And I was like, about what? And they're like 2:30. Like, and again, these barriers are made up, but they're also like gain meaning in different cultures of running. And for that like amateur marathoner who's hovering around it, it's like 2:30 or go for it. So then the next marathon I had on the book was Boston 16. And
that was another hot one, right?
Yeah. And it was, in hindsight, like not a great idea to like just, I would tell people, don't barrel out at a goal pace at Boston in the heat and just go for it. Like you need to, Boston's all about like ebb and flow. Tactical, like all like feel it in yourself. And to be honest, so I had some stuff going on at home where like my job situation changed, and I reached this moment where I got to Boston and I knew that the thing I felt I could control was my marathoning. And the moment I returned home, I had to like figure out the next step of my career. Right. And so in a totally meaningful way, when things really got hard at Boston 16, because it was hot and it was one of the years. So Boston's so fickle. That was a year where it started okay and got hotter. Whereas 17, it started hot and got cooler. So that everyone's body is going to respond differently to that. I went out with this group, and as they started to like suffer, I started to go ahead a little bit and then be like, what am I doing? Why am I ahead? But it was all in a matter of moments, like couldn't question it. And then really like in a meaningful way, got to a point where I was like, you can control this.
Yeah.
And I was more scared of like the uncertainty of when
afterwards.
It was like, you get home and it'll be great, but like you got to figure out that next thing. Whereas like part of the beauty of marathoning is like, if you really zoom in, you can control like the next block and then the block after that. And I ran 229. I broke 230. I wrote a whole essay called 9,000 Seconds, just like recapping it all. And I mean, honestly, I feel like a weird imposter writer because I write these essays and I love writing them, but I also read a lot about, there's a lot of content in the world today about like the routines of writers and the struggle of writing and, how good writers really work at it. I like went to a restaurant, got a pint of beer and like wrote that whole essay because it was just so vivid in my mind.
Yep.
People were like,
yeah, but it's coming from passion. It's coming from like, you're not doing research on something. It's just like an outpouring of emotion.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I have so much respect for, writers. The closer you get to something, I think it's like getting close to a mountain. You're like, damn, that's really cool.
It's really big. Yeah.
Writers who are able to bring passion and poetry to something that like they don't care or know anything about is what I realized. So yeah, I've written these essays that are like overly wordy, poetic race recaps. But I really think about, what do I want to remember? Like, I know I'll be older and be like, what was that moment like? I want to capture it. And then also, I really try to think about my readers' experience and their attention span. So I read, this is not to knock anyone else's about like writing, but some people write like the full weekend race weekend recap. And they detail everything. And I'm like, that's great. That's like a journal entry. Whereas I'm like, man, I just experienced something. And the essence of what I experienced is like those moments and those quotes and those like doubts and fears and excitements, which rises up. So I try to pull out, I'll like write a bunch of stuff and be like, yep, that's interesting to me, but no one needs to.
My favorite was the burn the boat one. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So again, 229, Boston 16, it's hot. Come back. I actually got injured Boston fall of 16, but my teammate ran 225, Patrick Reeves, and he's part of the Bowerman Track Club with me, and he's been a very good friend and integral to my progression. So I slipped in with this group of friends, and what's been cool is we have this group of friends who like almost, marathoning is a hobby, but it's so hard that it takes a lot of effort. But with a group of friends, you're able to like make it a social event. Right. So he started to say like, hey, let's start to ramp up our runs. Let's like ramp up our training. But so he ran 225, and that when someone you train close to runs something, you get this transitive boost of like, I bet I could do that. Right. Or like sort of close to it. So, then Boston 17 ran 228, and you start to go, okay, like on a not hot day on a flat course, we could probably like run faster. So we go to CIM and we just like throw caution to the wind. Paul Leak, I don't know if you know this, we came through the half at Cal International Marathon in 17, and he literally stood there with his arms out going, what are you doing, Bromka? Because we were coming through the half about a minute to 2 minutes faster than he thought he'd see us. Yeah. And he was just dumbfounded, and we just burst out laughing because we were just, it was a beautiful day. Cal International is like the fastest marathon in the world, and you just go like, let's just hit it. And so then we ran 223. And when you run 223 in today's day and age, the questions again start coming like, so you're going to go for the Olympic trials qualifier. And when they first started coming, I was like, I don't even know what you guys are talking about. Like, that's like light years ahead. And it just seems stupid. That was like December. It was like within the week after 223. But by like January, February, you start to get your mind around it a little bit. And then I realized that my teammates were like, we're doing this. We might blow up next December, but we're going to go out at 2:19 pace. So the Olympic trials qualifier B standard for men is 2:19. If you get under it, you get to go to the Olympic trials. If you don't get to go. And I almost again, 2:30 came about because I looked at other people and they were like, dude, this is the goal. Go for it. You're at the cusp. And then it sort of came again when they're like, 2:19 is the goal. And you're like, really? Oh God, that sounds hard.
And what's that pace?
So I had run 2:23, which is 5:29 pace per mile, and 2:19 is 5:18 pace per mile. So it's 11 seconds faster after cutting off 11 seconds the last time. And it's almost like
I've never run a 5K that fast.
I describe it as, I have all these different analogies as I've tried to get my mind around it. My latest analogy is it's like treading water in the middle of a pool, holding a weight above your head, and if you're
while you're on fire,
yeah.
while your hair is on fire,
well, everything and the pool is burning down.
You're just surrounded by a ring of fire, burning oil.
But very meaningfully, if you practice at the pace and then you get out and you realize oh, my mouth is above the water, because there's a difference between, if you can still breathe, it's your mind is freaking out.
Yeah.
Because it's too fast. But if you can still breathe if you can breathe enough to settle your heart rate, you're like, oh shit, I can do this at least long enough to put myself in the mix.
So I mean, this is true for, if you're running a 3-hour marathon, if you're running 3.5, whatever the goal is. I'm going out to run Providence in a couple weeks, and my PR currently is 3:20, and I haven't had a good marathon yet, and I'm more so excited about celebrating fitness. I haven't run a marathon in 2 years and blah, blah, blah. But I'm still going to try and run sub 3.
Yeah.
But the concept of cutting 20 minutes off or running 6:52 pace for 26.2 miles, it boggles my mind that this is something that I can do. So you talked about the imposter piece. How do you rectify the I have these skills and go for it?
Yeah.
Your 2:19 is fucking fast. And I'm sure it's hard for you to conceptualize too. I mean, so how do you do it?
Yeah. I mean, you both practice it. You find workouts where you can emulate it. And then you also just I try to separate it from day-to-day running.
Yeah.
Racing a marathon is just separate, and you have to create a mental space in which you're going to perform. And then you also the stride feels very, very different. I always say if you started jogging and you warmed up and you had to speed up continuously to 5:18 pace, you would be like, this is so fast. It's so hard. But what you do is you do a little jog, and then they fire the gun, and you or in practice, you click the watch and you start, it almost feels like skipping along at a pace.
Yeah.
And you're this feels totally different than my running. And then meaningfully, we also do the broad strokes of a good training plan. So we do stuff sub 5 minute pace. You do tempos below marathon pace, where you're oh gosh, this is uncomfortable. So that then both physically and mentally, you're but I like to say I've gotten stronger in a way that is a journey I've been on that I didn't even know was possible from when I was a college kid. My mom said recently, if you trained this in college, would you have been faster? And I'm well, multiple elements of that are impossible. The college season is different. The college camaraderie is different. And I know my body and the warning signs of injury so much better, so that
and you probably sleep more.
I sleep more. I take better care. You know when to dial things up and down. I race less, but also in college, it's a team mentality. You do the workouts together, and there's some tweaking, but you don't go hey man, I'm just gonna, maybe because they're smarter now, hopefully, but I just, in the way that my teammates and I train together probably twice a week, and then the other 5 days we either rest or run high mileage or low mileage or fast mileage, and we do our own thing because that's very personal to what you need. So you practice the different paces, and then you go so I've gotten stronger year over year. And then also you mentally go like, this is nuts, but like maybe we can do it.
Yeah.
And I realistically, you get more calloused to the endeavor of a 26-mile run, where like I used to like go out. I mean, when I qualified for Boston, I was like, okay, go out really boring for 16, 18 miles and then
Turn it on.
And now I'm like, okay, like, I call it like I've almost bank shotted my PRs, because if you read the article, it's like you're supposed to negative split and you're supposed to do all this thing. Like I've positive split my way to like 6 PRs in a row. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you guys.
Yeah,
I'm not
working.
saying it's better. Yeah. I'm not saying it would set me up for anything, but it's what's happened. And part of that's been like I've run 2 PRs at Boston, so you're like, okay, Boston's a hard course. But yeah, it's again like slipping in with another pack and being like, let me just try to hang with these people.
Yeah. So you're a busy guy. You're active with work. You have a wife and a son, and you're running some pretty high mileage. How do you balance it all?
When my son was born,
and how old is he?
He's 4. He just turned 4. And he is a wonderful little guy, and he loves to run around, and it's so much fun. But it sort of rewired my brain in terms of sleep. Like you don't get a lot of sleep for a couple months, and then I'd never really been up at 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. and all these things. Like it just made me think differently about sleep. So if I want to get mileage in, I get up at 5 and start running at 5:30, because it was also important to me to not like miss his life to run, because I already do. So I have started building mileage. I always tell people, like, I have friends who just naturally are able to run 100 miles a week. And 5 years ago when I was getting into this, it was almost relieving to me. I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I just like can't.
Like a lot of time investment.
It's time, but also like I just physically, I would hit those warning signs of like my hips were off, I was in pain, and it was like really early. So I was doing like 60% of some of my friends' mileage, and then 70%, and I've just like slowly built that dial, like so slowly. That now, and I also was all about single runs. I was like, doubling is junk mileage. It was also like a little bit of a mental safety. Like it just, I wasn't sure if I could do it, and so now my perfect day is like get up at 5, run for an hour from 5:30 to 6:30, like take my son to school, and then work, and then go for a lunch run, and then work some more, pick him up or meet him at home, like have the evening and be like, wow, I got in like 17 or 18 miles and also got in work and didn't totally ignore the family.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing that really is tough for me is the long run. It's like we try to do our long runs on Saturday morning, sort of like you're tired by Friday night anyway. It's like better to just go to bed early and not pretend you're going to have a social life, than hit it and then have a weekend where you can fully like focus on the family. But like our long runs take forever. I mean, my buddy who's a golfer, he's like, that's a round of golf. Cause like if you're going to take a serious long run, like you go to the right location, you warm up a little bit, get in miles, get in a long workout, get cool down miles, then you're toast. You like have to get some food, and then you get home, and it's like been 4 hours away from the family, which is, it's honestly the thing that stands out as the first thing that I'll dial back on when I kind of step off this, because it takes so much meaningful time away. But yeah, I think between morning runs and some lunch runs, it's so personal to what your body can handle. And then also I've gotten really obsessed with my strength training routine that is with a kettlebell and a hex bar deadlift in my basement that takes about 18 minutes. So I just don't have time for anything else. Mm-hmm. And it came about because I knew a trainer, and I said like, all right, cut the shit. Like,
what do I need?
Yeah. What do I need? I'm going to run about an hour, and I'm not going to go to the gym for another hour after that. It's just not going to happen. So what will happen is it won't happen. Right. So what would you have me do? And we built, what's become like fairly well known in terms of a series of squats and lunges and like such. But that routine has absolutely kept me healthy and allowed me to scale my mileage incrementally year over year. But yeah, like aside from the time away from the family for the long run, like I just start to feel I love running this high mileage. Like, it feels really good. And you know, like the whole grind of it's the winter and it's dark and getting up early, but it's like it's very like, I think if I was not, I've tried to think about if I stopped trying to up the training and up the improving, what would I do? And I'd still run a lot of those same runs. I might not do like the length. I don't think I need to run 12 in the morning to feel awesome. Like
Right.
it could be an 8 and it'd be totally fine. I've often thought about like, I don't love the long mileage, but you do that all so that then on the long run with your friends, you can keep up. And that's the thing of like, I start to find inspiration from just like friends doing skateboard tricks. And you're just like, you work on, you know, I'm not a skateboarder. I'm horrible. I tried it once and almost broke my arm, but you see, you know, men and women on the like practicing skateboarding and they're just trying to hit a trick. They're not like, well, I'm really going to like read a article in a magazine
Right.
about like all these like body hacks to like, they're just like, man, my buddy hit the trick and I want to hit the trick.
Yeah.
And that's, I find that to be more analogous to like the essence of what we're trying to do, which is like, damn, I just had a good run, but my buddy was way off in the distance.
Yeah.
So like, what do I need to do over the next 3 months to get there?
Cool. What would you tell Peter of 2005?
Oh, Peter of 2005 just like I thought I was like fast having done all this track workouts in college, but what I couldn't appreciate was how much time I'd spent injured. Like I was probably burnt out or injured in nearly every season. And that was some combination of the racing schedule. And then just like, I was hitting every note all the time, like racing a lot, still having a social life, still running long when I was tired. Like I was just fried. So to say like, this is going to you can get somewhere, but it's going to take a long time. And I mean, we have young guys who are almost, Peter from 2005 joined the BTC and they're like, I did a 20 miler before Boston. Why did Patrick beat me by so much? I'm like, Patrick's done 120 milers. You've done one. Like it's not a one unlock. So my new analogy is sort of like one of those long escalators in the metro, like in DC or something, where you just get on and, you know, some people are like, I got places to be. And they're like hoofing it up. And I'm like, what if you just chill and you ride the escalator for 5 years? You get really high up.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, and that's where the elusiveness of the pressure, what's the right amount of pressure and what's too little.
It's like a razor's edge.
Yeah. But like my buddies and I love this lifestyle. Like I know very good runners who run Chicago, right? I know one guy who ran Chicago. He had a good race. And then I ran, so that's early October. I ran into him in December and he's like, oh yeah, I'm getting back into running again. I'm like, oh wow, that guy just took 2.5 months like off. That means that you're not building incremental strength for that quarter of a year, which sounds like, you know, I
think a lot of people fall into I don't want to call it a trap, but like fall into that cycle of like, oh, running sucks. But it's like, if you want running to not suck, you have to run. And you don't have to run high mileage all the time. And you shouldn't run high mileage all the time. But I think if you run year round, you'll feel good, like better than normal.
Yeah, I mean, I have this, I wrote about it a couple of years ago, this idea of like, to be a marathoner, you need to run as much mileage as you can.
Right.
And so, but then like, let's break that down. As much mileage, because I think like the born to run thing of, you know, our bodies are built for movement. Absolutely true. The problem is like, we're proving right here, like you biked over here, but I took a train. I walked a couple blocks. I'm sitting in a chair. Like you have to get brutally honest, just you in the mirror about what your body can handle. And so I always encourage people to like do a workout and then run the next day for your easy run and figure out what amount of mileage at what pace you actually recover. Not like what pace you wish you recovered or what length you wish you recovered. And in 2013, that was like 4 miles for me. That's now like 12 miles. I can run 12 miles and my body will recover because it's taken 5 years. And so,
and at what pace are you running that?
And meaningfully, like when I'm really training, like the pace variation, I aspire to the Kipchoge, like
9,
like
10.
just like, so, I mean, I love running 8 minute pace. I get a little bit, I catch myself being impatient and I'm running like 7:15, 7:30s. And it's like, I could talk to you for an hour about like, it's not about proving yourself on, non-key performance days and still like push the pace a little bit like, oh, I gotta be fit.
So just to reiterate, Peter has run a 2:19 marathon and he's running 7:15 to 8 minute pace for his easy days. Take note of that.
And I mean, I get laughed at by the guys who, I know some people who've gone over to Kenya and like been with Kipchoge. They're like, dude, he's run 2:01 and he runs 9 minute pace often in the afternoons. So that idea of like, if you really simplify you just need to train your body to be more efficient and stronger at running. And the body can handle a tremendous amount of running if it's properly trained.
Right.
Now, most of us, I mean, tens of thousands of us on Marathon Monday are on some element of a comeback journey to running because we have sedentary lives, we have desk jobs. Like there's a lot of things pulling us away from being like the natural born runners.
Running all the time.
Totally.
Running to catch your food.
Absolutely. So like your body can, that's why I think it's hard for me to impart sometimes to beginners because I'm like, you got to really know what your body can handle and the warning signs of when you're overdoing it. And there's good literature on these things, but like it's not about just saying like, oh, I heard 70 miles a week gets you there, so I'll just start running 70 miles a week.
Right. Yeah, it's fascinating. Even the same volume at different intensities. Like, so I haven't trained for marathons since 2017, and when I was doing that, I was running like 40 to 55 miles a week. And like 55, 60 was my peak. And now I'm running like easy weeks of 55. And it's like, if you just, it's not one workout. It's not two workouts. It's not 1 month of workouts. It's just like layering on top of each other.
So my new thing challenge to people, because the closer I've got to 219, the more I really can appreciate actually what it means to try to BQ.
Right.
Like these people who are like, I didn't pick that standard. I don't get to come up with like a meaningful time goal that like is representative to me. I have to hit a standard.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, damn it. Now I really understand what they're saying. But
versus like 230 or
230 is like, oh, it'd be nice. I mean, like a certain number,
like a hard number, 219.
Yeah. And all these numbers are made up. When I had run 241, I had a buddy who run 229. I'm like, dude, everyone, the most of the world thinks we're the same pace.
Right.
Like,
but that's the thing. Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
It's all like I mean, the biggest consistency of people I've talked to on this podcast is they don't care about the time. They don't care about, any of that. It's, are you enjoying it? Are you having fun? Are you working towards a goal? Are you achieving that goal and then picking another goal?
Yeah.
And Ben Rosario really hammered this point home. He was like, we don't talk about times. We talk about effort. We talk about putting in the best effort on that day. And you can't control who shows up at the race, and you can control your effort on that day and how you get to that starting line.
So how you get there, two things to that though, because I'm curious of your thoughts on this is when people say like, I'd really like to BQ, I'm like, cool, but we're all living busy lives and we have like, truthfully, we have like these compartmentalized aspirations of like, I'd like to be a BQer, but like kind of in the next year, because then I'm thinking of getting into like mountain biking and
then I want to do an Ironman.
Yeah. And I'm like, dude. So I was like, when people reach out to me, I'm like, what would it look like if you BQ'd next year? Not this coming year, but the year after that.
Right.
Do you love it? Because you're willing to post about like the grind and the sacrifice. And, I mean, because it
wake
is a
me
sacrifice.
up in 3 years. Yeah.
I mean, do you love it enough to just slip in and be like to live this lifestyle for 2 years? Because you can get a long ways in 2 years.
Right.
And so then piggybacking on that is this idea of understanding your why.
Yep.
Which I find fascinating.
Which is the point of the podcast.
Yes. And I wanted to hear about this because in some ways I wanted to be here and tell people that if they're not sure what their why is, I personally feel like my why is maybe like a wall that I'm so close to that if you ask me to write it down as a writer, I might have trouble.
But does that wall keep getting further and further away and you never actually achieve it? And that's what gets you up at 5 a.m?
Yeah.
Because for me, that's what it is.
Gotcha. Yeah. I just think there's it's a lifestyle thing of if I wanted to do something that I wasn't fully ingrained in, if you said like, I want to be a, ex-handicap golfer and I don't golf, you'd have to be like, well, why?
Right. Yeah.
Why? And then like have very meaningful logic that links back to the time commitments you're going to make and the new behaviors.
How you're going to get there.
How you're going to get there. Whereas I'm like, I love getting up and meeting friends in the darkness for a run. And I love meeting my friends and like uncovering what's possible like on these weekend runs. And to me, like my favorite, I had this moment last fall where I'd gutted myself on a morning run. And then I was carving pumpkins with my son on the porch. And then we like walked and got a new book for him at the bookstore. And I was like, that was a perfect day.
Yeah.
Done. Like, put a pin in it. If I could do that day
every day,
if I could do it even once a year, it was just like a beautiful fall day. And I had family time and I had like just smashed a long run in the morning. And so you feel a certain way very physically. And you're just like, yeah, I mean, and then it gets very sort of philosophical for me of like, I'm 37 years old and you're at that age where you're like, what do I want with my career? What do I aspire to financially? Like what are my plans for life? And I'm biased, but like it's fun to be into stuff that's relatively cheap that you can relatively control, that like, you see someone driving like a new Tesla and I'm like, I ran 219. Like that blows my mind. I can understand how you might save enough money or take out a lease to buy a Tesla, but like I can't even fathom how I did that. It becomes like social, and so all these cliches like I say that and they come flooding back into my mind. Like people say like health is wealth, and you're like, what are you? Health is wealth. It rhymes. Like, yeah. Come on, like, but you're like, I had no idea this was possible, and I don't know how much longer it'll be possible, and you see people like on these journeys, and yeah, you just like. You grab onto a meaningful journey that someone else is on, and you're like, that's so. I often write in like very emotional ways about running because I'm like, that's where my mind goes to. Like if I go to a really good rock show, and like the musical artist is up there and they're just like doing what they're best at, my mind drifts to like those moments,
like flow.
Yeah, the flow moment of just like really pushing,
dialed in.
Yeah, dialed in. Like whether it's a workout on. There'll be like sun rising over like these fields and we're just like hammering 5:15 pace. And I'm like, I'd rather be here. Aside from my family, like being with my family carving pumpkins, like I'd rather be here. And so I get to do this. My wife is like she's more financially sound and than me. And so she does like, all the strengths. Exactly. She's important to have around. And
she run 219?
One of the best moments of our relationship is one of our first dates. We went over to her apartment and I hadn't really told her I wasn't as big into running 10 years ago when I met her. And so hi,
I'm kind of a running nerd.
I had not really delved into that. And she, in this amazing moment, she like told me about her new running shoes she bought. And she was like, I'm kind of a runner. And like, I'll always remember it so fondly because she's in hindsight, she's like, you jerk. You didn't tell me about like how you grew up a runner, your dad's a runner, all this stuff. I'm like, no, but it was, I was in love with you and you were telling me about running.
It's all about you. Yeah.
So yeah, these moments are really meaningful and like they're relatively, I brought it up because she totaled of all the amount of money I spent on running last year. And she's like, all right, fine. Like it wasn't that much. Like,
at least you're not a triathlete.
Yeah, exactly. Or like we'll
come out of 0 bikes.
We come out of free solo, and I'm like, "Aren't you glad I do a safe sport?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, okay, all right."
That's a savvy move to take her to that movie.
But that's the other thing is I went to an outdoor film festival recently, and I'm like, every one of these events is totally intense and totally awesome and way more dangerous than
you could die like any day.
Yeah, I'm like a total wuss compared to these people, so I just like, it makes me love the sport even more.
Nice. The other thing that I found interesting was, can we talk about the 21940 and what was that like to be so close?
Oh, so there's running 219 is running 518 pace. And as it's built, there's like more and more momentum. There's a piece I want to write about called like the digital runner, which is about the amount of information we can glean from Strava plus Instagram.
Right.
Like you can see these people's lives. It used to just be there was a list of people who'd hit the standard and like some results from marathons.
Right.
And now there's like stories being told over Instagram and such, social media. And then the splits and the workouts. And so there's more and more momentum around people trying to hit this OTQ standard. And Cal International, they've started to hashtag themselves like OTQ Factory because they,
which is really smart.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. But it's wild. Like in theory, you'd say like, our friend Jonathan's going to run 219 pace and he will be pacing. And if anyone who wants to hit the qualifier should run with him. In reality, it's way more complex than that. They fire the gun and there's a pack. I mean, for me, I was out ahead of pace, meaningfully ahead of pace. And there was a pack. There were multiple sub packs ahead of me. And I'm sure there were sub packs behind me. And so we went into the race with this idea of like, we can probably do it. And my training partner, Patrick, who I've mentioned, I was dead sure he could do it. It was like whether he was going to do it on the exact day. But you a little bit have to throw caution to the wind. And that's where all the pace charts and all the like negative splitting, like it matters and it's real. But like you get into the heat of it and you're like, okay, here we go. And so halfway split would be 69:30. We come through at 68:45. I subtly like slyly mentioned to Patrick, like, congrats, you just PR'd in the half marathon. And he's like, you asshole. And I'm like, sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Just do it again.
Yeah, just do it again. He went like 69:45 and then like 69:52 or something, 56. Wow. So he basically did it again, which is mind blowing. So in reality, I went out a little hot. I went out and ran his race and one other guy's race. But it's that thing of like, I was just saying to a friend today, like in theory right now I should be on I have a marathon in 4 days. I could be on a carbohydrate depletion. I could be on a caffeine depletion. I could have a pace chart that I'm memorizing, but like, you just have to figure out like, what's the least mental stress of the right combination of things. And I'm pretty wary of like changing up too much race week. It's like, people are like, what should you eat before the marathon? And I'm like, probably, ideally, you eat what you ate before most of your key long runs, you know? So 219 pace, I was out ahead and then the guys dropped me and I was like, wait a second. I just ran a 5:11 mile, 7 seconds. I banked 7 seconds, quote unquote. And I just got dropped. So now I'm like, okay, I can run pace by myself. Like I can do this. Let's lock in.
What's it like running that fast by yourself?
It definitely was like all of these conflicting emotions. You're just like trying to find your stride because you're not like, for the previous like 13 miles, I'd been kind of gauging visually off the person in front of me. And now like I had one other teammate next to me and I'm like, we're good. And he's like, okay. And then I look at my watch and like the instantaneous moving pace was slow. And I'm like, oh shit, we're slow. We got to go. So you just start pushing. And part of the beauty of like a really fast course and not Boston, like CIM, is like, you can kind of, some of the miles, like I blacked out a little bit in terms of I don't remember them exactly because you're so focused on the moment. And I mean, my wife, I passed her at 17 and I could hear in her voice that she thought I was now having a bad race because I'd fallen off and I didn't have any, oxygen to yell to her, like, I'm still on pace. But like, I don't think, again, with these external goals that someone posted about my race and they were like, he was on 219 pace until he hit the wall and he ran 219.40. And I'm like, whoa. Thank you for the like writing about me. But like, let me tell you what the wall feels like. That feels like a pile of bricks coming down. Like I reached, and what's kind of fun about 219 is at mile 22 or something, I was like, okay, you're starting to slow. Just go for it. Like, just go for broke. Just like speed up now, even though you have too long to go, because it doesn't fucking matter. Like you gotta end knowing you.
It's like, it's about the effort you put out, and can you be proud of the effort you put out? I raced a 5K in February, and the 5K is just such a beast of an event because you can go balls out the whole time. And I was hoping to PR, break a, I don't know, 4-year-old PR, and I didn't. And I momentarily was disappointed. And then I thought about like, where was my mind at mile 2.5? My mind at mile 2.5 was push the fucking gas down and pass people. And I passed like 5 or 6 people and I came in second. And I was just like, it was the coolest feeling to like be in that much pain and willingly go after more pain. Like mile 2.5 in this race is uphill. And it's just like, who puts a fucking hill in a 5K at mile 2.5? But it was just like, you have so much power right now, and it's just the coolest feeling.
And I had all these, so I had preloaded all these like mantras in my mind, and one was like from a woman who I ran with at college, and she's super tough, and she had just said like, just remember like run fast because you can. And I was like, holy shit! Like that when she texted that to me, like it almost brings me to tears right now because I'm like, it's so true. Like all these splits and all the external factors, you're just like, but I'm really capable right now of pushing it really hard. And let's just do that. And I remember looking down at my watch and I'm like, I am now running officially 10 seconds slower than I need to per mile. And but
it felt awesome.
Yeah,
probably.
I was still flying along. Yeah. And I'm like, by any other standard of any other marathon I've ever run, I'd still be flying. And just because I'm
this arbitrary,
yeah. So just slipping based on that, you're like, I can still enjoy this next block. It's really, I mean, it gets very painful, but like and so then looking back at the fact that that's the only reason I broke 220 is because I just like had this utmost urgency. I call it like the like Black Friday sale, like the doors open, you're just like go 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 go
go go go. I have a friend
go.
who uses the line, "You've come this far, don't fuck it up," and so like that's come to my mind in like time trials and 5Ks and things like that. And like you get halfway through and you've done such a good job, like why would you want to let it go at that point? And it works. It's just like, it's so simple. It's like, I've come this far, I can keep pushing, I'm still alive, I'm still breathing. Yeah. Let's go.
And so then just like, and again, that's where the Eliud Kipchoge model of like returning to like your stride, returning to that fluidity, and like even like trying to find a smile to just like lean into more of it is kind of mind blowing, but it's like very simple and helps you kind of circumvent all of like the negative mind, where your mind can go and all the things you can worry about. And like the last 3 miles of Boston on Monday are going to be horrible. They're just going to, I mean, you're just like, okay,
but you're going to smile.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. I think that's a perfect place to end it. So have fun out there on Monday, and when you pass mile 18, do it with a big smile, and we'll see you out there.
Thanks so much, man.
Of course. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.